A very warm welcome to the second session of this afternoon to mark, indeed celebrate, 1 year of this important initiative, which is the Indian Academic Freedom Network. We have two speakers this afternoon, Nivedita Menon, who will talk about the Central Civil Services Conduct Rules formulated in 1964, but revised in 2014 to apply in an unprecedented move to university teachers to blunt the edge of protest, dissent, critique of government policy, which arguably is the reason why universities exist in democratic societies. These rules have been invoked against colleagues randomly rather than systematically, I think by design, because not knowing which side of the law you're on is sometimes more crippling than knowing that you are against the law. And this kind of a smoke and mirrors policy, creating confusion seems to be the, unique selling principle of this current regime that we have, creating confusion, and that's the way they seem to operate. So without further ado, I'll invite Nivedita to present.
सबसे पहले मैं अपना सलाम पेश करूंगी हमारे सारे छात्र छात्राएं जो जेल में हैं, उनकी बहादुर माएँ, उनके बहादुर परिवार और हम सब जो लड़ते रहेंगे और हम जीतेंगे, ये हमें पूरी कॉन्फिडेंस है कि हम जीतेंगे. I will very quickly present 2 or 3 points about around the civil service rules. So they're called the CCS rules, Central Civil Service Conduct Rules. So you'll see them sometimes referred to as CCS rules and sometimes as conduct rules. And these rules were sought to be implemented on university teachers by the UGC in 2017. Now, when this happened, when the UGC issued a circular mandating that all universities will henceforth be covered by the conduct rules or the CCS rules, there was a huge uproar in the country. And the critique that was made, I will very quickly present you some key points that were noted by the Union of JNU Teachers, JNUTA. So I will read some of the sections of that document to give you a sense of what is the problem with implementing or assuming that CCS rules, which are applicable to government servants, should be applicable to academic spaces. So there were 2 responses when this. So now I'm going to basically give you parts of the JNUTA document. So what basically the 2017-2018 UGC circular did was instructed universities such time that the concerned university formulates its statutes, ordinances and regulations for service matters, the university should follow the Government of India rules. There were 2 responses by compliant administrations in different central universities. We have all noticed in the last 10 years the gradual replacement and the introduction of a new vocabulary which is entirely bureaucratic and entirely reflective of Government of India ways of functioning. So were terms like competent authority for the Vice Chancellor, to show compliance to regulations. These are all the kind of terms that as university teachers we have suddenly come to see that we are governed by. So there were 2 responses by compliant administrations in different central universities. The first was to issue a circular mandating compliance with the CCS rules. The second was to adopt the conduct rules in university statutes on the grounds that this is mandated by the UGC. So in the first category, Vishwa Bharati issued a circular mandating compliance with the UGC directive. Other universities such as Indira Gandhi National Tribal University, Amarkantak, adopted the conduct rules in their ordinances. JNU was at that time, it seemed, in the process of adopting this latter route, and protests were mounting in all these places. Now, the whole point of the conduct rules regime aims to obstruct academics from doing their academic work. The freedom to reason, profess, argue, dialogue, critique, debate, and disagree is a professional requirement as far as we are concerned. It's not a little luxury which some of us might like. So what are some of the rules that do this. Rule number 5 bars of the civil service rules, bars all political participation and activity beyond voting by the teacher and his family. The effect of this is that academics must, in order to preserve their jobs, renounce political subscription to political parties, to any organization that takes part in politics, political movements or activities. Any critique, whether in these are the effects of that rule. Any critique, whether academic, philosophical or empirical, will be seen as failing to demonstrate loyalty to the government, UGC or the university. So the job of academics then is to glorify government policy. For many, and the impact on backward sections, especially SCs, STs, OBCs, employment in education provides the necessary social and economic capital precisely for entry into public life. That is precisely the first step. But this rule amounts to shunting out academics from the task of building cultures of constitutionalism and equality. So that's rule number 5. No political activity beyond the act of voting. Rule number 6 allows university administrations to define what is prejudicial and contrary to the interest of national interest, public order, decency, or morality. These terms are chilling. It states that no employee teaching or non-teaching of the university shall join or continue to be a member of an association, the object or activities of which are prejudicial to the interests of the sovereignty and integrity of India, public order, decency, and morality. And obviously, what this means is that, for example, if you were a teacher who's part of a women's collective in a university and they write a joint representation against gender-based discrimination, for example, you would be in violation of rule number 6. Rule number 7 categorically bans dissent of all kinds, from those that are perceived to be contrary to the interests of sovereignty to those demonstrations which offend morality. It states that no employee shall engage himself or participate in any demonstration or strike which is prejudicial to the interests of sovereignty and integrity of India, security of the state, friendly relations with foreign states, public order, morality, decency, that which involves contempt of court, defamation, or incitement to an offense. It is a large number of categories under which you could be found in violation if rule number 7 is applied to us. Obviously, this means that the kind of normal activity that we do, critical of the government, critical of social practices, all of these would be in violation of civil conduct rules. Rules number 8 and 9, no employee shall, except with the previous sanction of the university, own wholly or in part or conduct or participate in the editing or management of any newspaper or any other periodical. Any other periodical. Does this include academic journals as well? Of course it does. So rule number 8, 2 prohibits the publication of books and articles save for a purely scientific or literary character. So this is specifically obviously for government employees, but this will be applied to us. Rule number 9 makes it clear that all such interventions must not be of a nature that has the effect of an adverse criticism of the government or embarrasses relations with the union or with any foreign government. So in short, there is rule number 10 as well, which bans teachers from giving any sort of public testimony and expert opinion in people's tribunals, jan sunwais. Rule 11 prohibits faculty from sharing unauthorized information with other colleagues and the public, except when ordered to do so. Rule 12 prohibits faculty from raising funds or trying to associate with fundraising for any objective whatsoever. So these are some of the ways in which this particular document from which I read out outlines the exact problems with putting teachers under CCS rules. Now, CCS rules are not applicable to teachers is what in 2015 the Allahabad High Court held. And in a particular case, the Allahabad High Court observed that professors of the university are neither members of a service, nor do they hold a civil post under the union, nor are they in service of local or other authority. CCS rules would therefore have no application to a central university. This was in 2015, but the order of the UGC comes out in 2018. Now, what happens is that there was massive protest nationwide against the idea of CCS rules in universities, and very quickly the HRD said that adoption of CCS rules was not mandatory. So in other words, they withdrew the mandatory character and said it is optional, which of course in today's India, anything that the government says is optional is as good as compulsory. Which still, because it means now by having said it's optional, basically it still leaves each university having to fight it out, resist having the CCS being adopted. JNU registrar announced it would not be adopting the CCS rules in the wake of this HRD clarification. Now, all this has happened, but even so, as late as 2023, that is, the CCS rules have been fought, challenged, etc. But institutions did adopt the CCS rules. In 2023, ISL Mohali invoked CCS rules against Dr. Ritujyoti Bandyopadhyay, citing the condition that he had breached of prior approval of the competent authority being required to express any opinion or comment on government policies. So Dr. Bandyopadhyay had violated this provision by signing a letter to the director of the Indian Institute of Science, which hundreds and hundreds of us had signed, and the letter which basically held Dr. Bandyopadhyay in violation, added that there was an earlier infraction, which was signing a petition against the CAA. Eventually, this letter it withdrew his suspension, and he was issued a so-called strong warning. So the CCS rule was invoked against him. The letter was a step back. The final letter was a step back after he gave a very strong reply, and his courageous and principled stand in which he refused to back down, and the support that he got from a large section of academics meant that ISL Mohali had to step back and only issue him a so-called strong warning. But obviously this is building up a file of so-called infractions. His file must be growing thicker even as we speak. So this is how the CCS rules function, and this is how they're used to gag people. I'm just going to be able to give some of the examples. But it's important to remember that even within the CCS rules, and this is the second point that I'm making now, I'm moving away from CCS rules as applicable to academics to CCS rules as applicable to actual government servants. And even within those rules, there is room for interpretation of CCS rules as non-restrictive if placed against constitutional freedoms. So there's a Tripura High Court judgment of 2019 on the political activity of a government employee. She was an upper division clerk in Fisheries Department. She was suspended for violating rule number 5 of the Tripura Civil Services Conduct Rules because she took part in a political rally and she wrote some very strong statements in Facebook against a particular political party. And this was seen as a violation of CCS rules. She went to court, and the court set aside the suspension. So the Tripura High Court, in the context of an actual government servant on whom the CCS rules are applicable, said, as a government servant, the petitioner is not devoid of her right to free speech, a fundamental right which can be curtailed only by a valid law. She was entitled to hold her own beliefs and express them in a manner she desired, subject to not crossing the borders laid down in sub-rule 4 of rule 5 of the conduct rules. So 5.4 basically prohibits government employees from proposing or seconding a candidate for election. That's a very specific political step that you're not supposed to do. As long as she doesn't do that, she has not violated the civil service rules, even as a government servant. So to apply those rules to academics is clearly way beyond the bounds of what is possible. And she was, and so the suspension was set aside by the Tripura High Court, and the CCS rules don't even stand placed against constitutional freedoms. The CCS rules don't even stand for government servants, let alone for academics. Now, the third and final point that I will make So what I've made 2 points really. One is that the CCS rules, if applied to academics, would essentially prevent us from being academics at all. Then this is like saying you cannot if you're engineers, you're not allowed to build. Or if you're a doctor, you're not allowed to treat patients. If you're an academic and you're not allowed to think and be critical, then you're not an academic, you're not a researcher, you're not a student. So this is so it's completely inapplicable to the profession that we're in. The second point that I made is that civil service rules are inapplicable even to government servants if they can be shown to be in violation of constitutional freedoms. And the third point I want to make is that are CCS rules necessary to gag and control faculty? And the very simple answer is, under this regime and for the last 10 years, no. They don't need CCS rules, they don't need any rules. So if you look at what, for example, the DU code, Delhi University came out with a code of professional ethics. By the way, I forgot to say that at the time when the UGC said that you have mandated that one should adopt CCS rules for universities, the MHRD was, I think it was the MHRD or the UGC was considering placing Delhi University under ESMA, Essential Services Maintenance Act, in order to prevent any kind of protests and strikes, etc. That was also withdrawn at that time because there was such a huge hue and cry about even CCS rules, let alone ESMA. Now, in 2014, very quickly, the DU Code of Professional Ethics. So this is now the last section of my presentation, in which I'm going to talk about the ways in which universities can function and control us without any such existing rules. So the DU Code of Professional Ethics in 2014, which is about 4 pages of what used to call moral science lessons in school. Mostly it's that you should be kind to students, you should be kind to colleagues and so on. But let me read out some of the really vicious provisions which are hidden inside all this Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam continuous invocation of that kind of a thing. So one is that teachers should adhere to a responsible pattern of conduct and demeanor expected of them by the community. So what is that responsible pattern of conduct? What is this community that will expect what of us? And again, as academics, our whole point is to challenge the community, whatever the community might be, even if it's a community of our own peers and colleagues. So to completely be, subservient to whatever community. And they should manage their private affairs. So not just in the university, but they should manage their private affairs in a manner consistent with the dignity of the profession. And somehow I don't think they're talking of domestic abuse. Somehow I think they're talking about sexual freedom. Teachers should, in addition, refrain from lodging unsubstantiated allegations against colleagues to higher authorities. How does one substantiate? What does this mean? Are they talking of sexual harassment complaints? Are they talking of complaints of caste discrimination? What are they talking about? We cannot complain, in short. Teachers should also refrain from allowing considerations of caste, creed, religion, race, or sex in their professional endeavor. This essentially means that when Sai says Brahmanism, that's a problem. If we say patriarchy, that's a problem. If we say capitalism, that's a problem. The problem will not be sexual harassment or misogyny or casteism. It will not be that. As you saw, wasn't it in Ashoka recently, where the students who were accused of casteism are the students who were demanding a caste census. So this is the DU Code of Ethics. To my knowledge, it has not been. Oh, of course, there is. I'm just reading out the non-moral sciencey parts. Refrain from taking part or subscribing to or assisting in any way activities which tend to promote feelings of hatred or enmity amongst different communities. Same difference. If you say any of these things, you are supposedly promoting hatred among communities, religions, or linguistic groups, but actively work for national integration, capital N, capital I. So basically that is about a simulation, right? It's about dissolving and destroying heterogeneity. So we have this kind of a code. You can manage with this kind of a code. It exists. It's there since 2014. It will be pulled out when necessary. I don't think it has been used yet, but these things are pulled out when necessary. You have violated section 1 of the DU code. So this already exists. It's there. The charge sheets, there are charge sheets on 48 JNU teachers. These charge sheets were issued to us for marching peacefully on campus to raise issues of multiple violations of JNU statutes and so on. Charge sheets are leveled against us on the grounds of the CCS rules. We all replied saying we are not bound by CCS rules. The High Court stayed the charge sheets. So that's the end of the story. That's a victory. No. Those charge sheets are informally invoked, have been informally invoked to deny retiring faculty their pensions and gratuity, to deny promotions, to prevent people becoming chairpersons and deans by seniority. So those charge sheets are held over our heads. If each of us separately goes to court, we win. We have won case after case. But what this means is, because the court says the charge sheet is not valid. But all that the university has to do is not give you your promotion, not give you your gratuity. You spend from your pocket, although so many young lawyers are doing so much pro bono work, it's extraordinary. I think lawyers are the last line of defense today. Our lawyers, our kinds of lawyers, are the last lines of defense against fascism today, and I really salute them. And so we have won many cases, but what this means is that individually each person has to go and fight it out in court. The process is the punishment. Two of our colleagues actually died soon after retirement without receiving what was due to them. So these charge sheets are still hanging over our heads, and we will have to each time have to go to court. We heard about the teacher from Jammu and Kashmir, Zahur Ahmed Bhatt, who testified in court on the abrogation of Article 370, and soon afterwards he was suspended. Now, CCS rules were not invoked. Nothing was invoked. What were the grounds that were invoked? That he files too many legal petitions. This is what the authorities said, that Zahur Ahmed Bhatt was suspended from his job because he files too many legal petitions. Fortunately, the Supreme Court noted this and asked the Attorney General and Solicitor General to look into it, and the suspension was withdrawn. Innumerable examples of teachers being suspended or disciplined in other ways on the basis of complaints by ABVP or other RSS-linked student organizations. We have hundreds of such examples. So, and this is all about academic freedom. So teachers are disciplined on the basis of rules that the university might itself invoke, on the basis of rules that have been held in abeyance by the court, on the basis of nothing but the school just simply thinks you're not, your authorities, in Zahur Bhatt's case it was the school authorities, simply feels you're just not disciplined enough. So you have, and this fourth kind of thing is where when you speak in class, there's a kind of a quick move by ABVP or RSS-linked students to tape, record, to put out, and immediately the police acts, the authorities act. So one example I can give you, I'm just literally giving you, as Nadeem also said and all the previous speakers said, we are touching the tip of the iceberg. It's not even the tip of the iceberg, it is, you can just see it from the sky. It's really huge what's going on. So we know that about Tejaswini Desai, professor at Kolhapur Institute of Technology's College of Engineering. She said in a class on human values and professional ethics. Now this is interesting. Can I take just maybe one more minute? This is actually interesting, this case, because the class is a class. She teaches engineering, some discipline of engineering, physics. She teaches physics. She was teaching a class on human values and professional ethics. Now, these are the kind of courses that the NEP is thrusting into universities, which are again at one level nothing at all It's about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam and so on, and it's some general moral sciencey blah. But when necessary, it can be used. So what happened in this, also interesting, we don't know the full background. The teacher previously teaching this class resigned. Now, I don't know, maybe I don't know, I'm not a journalist, I haven't followed it up. But I'm also intrigued by why there was a resignation, as a result of which Professor Desai suddenly had to teach human values and professional ethics. And in that class, what happens is that, so this is an interview she gave to News Laundry. The class of around 50 students told her that previously had a group discussion on discrimination. Desai suggested a discussion on gender discrimination, but it was shot down. What does this mean, shot down? Do we actually live in a university system, in a college of engineering, where students decide what the teacher will speak? Who are these students? I think we have to also stop saying students as if it's one category of people. Many of these so-called students are political activists. They have an agenda. They're in the class to do something. So when a teacher says, we will talk about gender discrimination, in which Indian classroom is it common to say, no, well, in some classrooms, yes, in some universities, but to say, no, we can't talk about gender discrimination. We will only talk about, they said, religious discrimination, and that's how it happened. And then they use that to start saying Muslims are rapists, etc., etc. And then she, of course, said that really made her uncomfortable. So she said, look, rape is a larger crime, and people of any community can rape, and there are, in fact, there's actually historical evidence to that effect. Little snippets of what she said, and some, she says, were doctored, were put out in the media. The police supposedly take notice. The authorities force her to go on leave, and she placed certain complaints with the police on this, but nothing has come of it. Now, I don't know what the latest situation is. I think probably some of you here, I think Anita knows her personally. Yeah, but I'm done. I'm just finishing off the last part. And then we see that private universities are not immune from this. They have acted against faculty in Ashoka, in Jindal, where Sabyasachi Das, Samina Dalwai, either you're forced to resign or you just face innumerable kinds of investigations. South Asian University, interestingly, is exactly the opposite issue of CCS. It claims immunity from Indian laws, and so the teachers it suspended have not been given a hearing by courts, because the 4 faculty suspended because SAU says we are not governed by Indian law and we cannot be discussed in Indian courts. It's run by Indians mostly, as far as I know right now, and the teachers were suspended for what? For supporting students in an anti-fee hike, in the reduction of a fellowship protest, and for supposedly being part of a Marxist study circle. And the letter which suspended them said, neither any Marxist study circle has been registered with SAU, nor has SAU allowed any person to indulge in illegal activities on the SAU campus. So this is part of that code of ethics kind of a thing. To do a Marxist study circle is apparently illegal. None of this holds up under the law of the land. So CCS rules are unacceptable, but authoritarian gagging of academic freedom does not need the invocation of the CCS, and the only way out is what we are doing, which is a unified and collective resistance. And in conclusion, let me simply read out one statement from the International Center for Theoretical Sciences, TIFR. ICTS TIFR, which was shared with us by our friend Ravi Sundaram. If you go to their site, this is the statement on academic freedom, which we can adopt very easily. ICTS TIFR is committed to the protection of academic freedom. Both academic and non-academic members of ICTS TIFR are free to explore and express diverse ideas in the pursuit of human knowledge as interpreted in the broadest terms. They are free to participate in public discussions on such ideas. All members of ICTS-TIFR retain their fundamental right to freedom of expression as guaranteed in the Constitution. This includes the freedom to publicly articulate views that might be critical of those in positions of authority, whether at the center or elsewhere. It is understood by default that the views of an individual member do not reflect the official position of the center. I think this is a good state. I don't know if they actually function according to this, but at least it exists as a principle, and this is something we could all easily adopt. Thank you.